Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining the November 2025 edition of our monthly CAD training. Today's topics are going to be storm sewer profiles and storm sewer structure charts. As per normal, we're using Google Meet, which means feel free to put any questions you have in the chat or unmute and ask a question, but keep in mind that it is being recorded to be posted to YouTube later so that we have it for future reference. A PDF of the presentation and some sample drawing files have been saved at the file path on your screen on the S drive. If you haven't already, I recommend you go there and download at least the CAD files so that you can follow along as we go through the exercises today. The ones for this month are in a zip folder, so you'll need to extract those into a folder on your N drive so that you'll be able to work off of them, and it'll keep all of the paths for data shortcuts and XREFs intact. Okay, so with that, we're going to start off with a few things that are new. I pulled the relevant new template updates and procedures from our meeting that we had at the beginning of October so that they can be applied to today's training, since it is kind of topical in that way. So first one, as far as what's new template-wise, the Storm MD is now located in the design files folder. We'll be using a Storm MD today, so that's where you would look if this was in a real project folder structure. There have also been improvements made to that Stormwater MD and the MD that we're going to utilize today, these being the green boxes for the structure charts and for the working storm sewer profiles. And we're also going to use the new storm sewer structure chart plan sheet that will reference the Storm MD. A few of the relevant kind of procedures that have been new that we're going to make use of today. We're talking about storm sewer structure charts. Our procedure now is that the environmental designers are going to be creating those, and that they're going to be created within the Storm MD in those green boxes that we're going to look at here in a little bit. And then you can use any wipeouts to hide top of grade elevations for structures that shouldn't have them, such as end walls, head walls, and outfall pipes. Relevant procedures for storm sewer profiles. This would be that environmental designers are going to be creating working profiles of their storm sewer runs as a way to check for conflicts and cover. And these are going to be created in the Storm MD, again, in those green boxes that we're going to look at today. And then designers are responsible for profiles that are required as a part of a plan submission, which are also going to be in the green boxes, but in the regular MD instead of the Storm MD. Okay, now a few helpful hints as we get started. Anytime you're working with storm sewer pipe networks, I recommend making use of the multiple viewport configuration options within Civil 3D, because it'll let you view a plan and profile at the same time, or maybe you want to view a plan and your storm chart at the same time. Either way, it saves you a lot of panning back and forth and just makes things pretty quick. Also, anytime you're working with storm sewer pipe networks, I'd recommend working in Civil 3D 2024 or newer. Older versions don't seem to work very well with our part catalog and can sometimes cause issues in the drawings for others, even if they are using new versions and you are using an old version. So if you are using a version older than 2024, I recommend you install 2026. And there are several of us in the office who would be happy to help you with that if you aren't sure how to do that. Okay, so now getting into kind of the meat of things. We can't really talk about anything pipe network related without talking about part catalogs. So hopefully this is a bit of a review, but I think it's always a good thing to check anytime you're doing anything with these networks. So part catalog is a collection of all of the available pipes and structures that could be used to create parts list. It has to be pathed to our S drive, or your parts list will show up as empty. And it could also show up as empty when you try to swap parts or if you're trying to add something new. If that happens, the first thing you want to check is your catalog path. So I'm going to show you where that is again, just to keep everybody up to speed with how that should work. So we're going to jump over to Civil 3D. We are going to create a new drawing using our MD template. So I'm going to go up here. Okay, so now that we are into our new drawing, we're going to click on the Modify tab, Pipe Network, and then we're going to go to Parts List dropdown and click Set Network Catalog. When you do this, you should see the catalog folder pointing to S-Design, Pantera CAD Standards, Pipe Catalog. If you see it pointing to your C drive, then you definitely want to update this to path here. And then under Pipe Catalog, you want to make sure you have US Imperial Pipe Catalog selected, and Structure Catalog should say Pantera Standard Inlets. Sometimes you might have the issue where you see the S drive up here, but maybe your Structure Catalog says something different. So you want to make sure you check all three of these options, and then if you click OK, everything should work moving forward as you work on your pipe networks. Now, one thing to note, if you are working in an older drawing and you're trying to utilize new parts that may not be in your parts list, that may not necessarily be an issue with your part catalog. And it may be something where we need to import some parts from the current version of the template into your older drawing. It's something that is relatively easy to do and should keep you moving with the latest and greatest stuff. So now we'll jump back into CAD or into the presentation. Okay, so how to profile pipe networks. The first thing you have to do with any profile is have an alignment. It uses that alignment as the basis to create the profile. We're going to show there are a few ways to create alignments. When we're talking about pipe networks, the most common ways I would do it is either by network parts or from an object being a polyline. After that, we can create the profile based on that alignment and then draw our parts within it. So we're going to jump over to Civil 3D and do an exercise for profiling storm sewer, in which we are going to create an alignment from network parts. We're also going to create an alignment from a polyline. Then we're going to create a profile view for one of those new alignments and draw some storm sewer parts within that profile. Okay, so now that we're back in Civil 3D, we're going to jump into our sample files, and we're going to open up the Storm MD file. So this file is a Stormwater MD. It already has surfaces in it via data shortcuts. It also has a storm sewer pipe network already in the drawing. And we're going to use this for a lot of the exercises for today. So step one, we need to create some alignments that we can use to make profiles. You can see here that I'm utilizing that multiple viewport configuration. My right side is the plan. My left side shows these green boxes that I keep talking about. So if anyone hasn't seen this yet, everything in these areas should look the same as what you're used to. You see boxes here for profiles, and then you see some new ones for storm charts. And this would be 4 sheets worth of storm charts. And then these working storm profiles. I would recommend putting the working storm profiles down here to keep them separate from something that you might need for an actual plan submission. This will also help because if you have these submission type profiles in your MD and you have the MD XREF'd into your Storm MD, you'll see all of those profiles up here. So you want to use these dedicated spaces down here to prevent overlap. Okay, so alignments. In this drawing, I've already drawn a polyline that we can use for an alignment by objects. Or up here, there is no polyline or any object to use. So first thing we're going to do is actually create an alignment from these network parts. To do that, we're going to go to the Home tab on our ribbon. We are going to go to Alignment, and then create alignment from network parts. When we click that, it's going to ask us to select the first connected network part. So I'm going to pick the inlet at the end of the run I want to profile. And then it says select next network part. I'm actually going to pick the last one that I want to profile. So I'm going to end my profile down here at I1. And you can see it highlighted everything in between, which it should use to create that alignment. So now I'm going to accept that command. I'm going to put this on a site. I'm going to actually create a new one. I'm going to call it Storm Profiles. I'm going to leave this as a miscellaneous alignment starting at station 0, but I am going to use the proposed alignment style, and I'm going to put a proposed centerline alignment label set so I can see my stationing. I'm also going to leave this box checked to create profile and profile view, and then I'm going to click OK. That will prompt it to bring up the Create Profile from Surface dialog box. Within this dialog box, we can select our alignment. Because we did it via network parts, it didn't give us an opportunity to name the alignment. So this is the default. I am going to grab my surfaces, which I believe in this drawing are EX surface overall, and then proposed. So under EX surface overall, I'm going to change my style from standard to EG. And under proposed, I'm going to change my style from standard to FG. And then click OK. And then I'm going to click Draw in Profile View. At this point, I can name my profile view, which I'm going to call I5 to I1. I'm going to name it after the runs that I'm profiling. It has the alignment selected that was created, and I'm going to pick Profile View Style, Land Desktop Profile View left to right. Then I'm going to click Next. I usually leave the station range as automatic. Profile View Height, I usually change this to user specified so it doesn't make the datum elevation on my profile an odd number like this 1051.55. I'd rather use nice even numbers, and I'd rather control the height of my profile view. So I do it here. Then under Profile Display Options, I always check to make sure there are no labels for these surfaces. In this case, there are. So I want to change that from standard to no labels for both. And hit OK. Then we're going to click Next. Here it's selected the pipes and structures that I used as a basis of my alignment. So that all looks good. We'll leave those. We'll click Next. Data bands, I'm going to use EGFG, elevations and stations. And I'm going to set the profile 2 part of the band to the proposed surface. Hit Next. Nothing should need to be changed here. So now I'm going to create profile view. It asks me where I would like to put the profile view, and I'm going to put it in my green box right here. And we'll just move that down. Okay, so there is one profile for the storm sewer. What you'll notice when we look at the alignment that it created from the network parts, I'm not really a big fan of using this option without modifying it because it will put one PI for each structure, and it usually puts it at the invert out of the box. So in this case, it's fine because the alignment runs the whole way through the box. But if you look down here, the alignment actually isn't even over the pipe, and it cuts through the edge of the box. And then down here, it does the same thing, leaves the pipe, cuts through the box. If you were going to use this option, what I would do is modify the geometry of the alignment. You'll also notice at the end, it started the profile at the invert out, so you can't even see the structure here. The way to modify this to make it a little more usable, even if this is just a working profile, would be to add some extra PIs. So the first thing I would do, we'll do this one real quick, is drag the endpoint of that alignment, and I'm going to go midpoint there. And then I'm going to click on the geometry editor and click the Add PIs button. And I'm going to snap to grab both the invert in and invert out on all of these boxes. So I'm just grabbing midpoints on that white line at the midpoint of that face of the box where the pipes are coming in. And that should clean up this profile a lot. It should make the boxes a little bit more uniform in size in your profile. And because we chose to keep the stationing as automatic when we created the profile, you can see it tweaked it. I don't remember what the end station was before, but I think it was maybe 355 or something like that. And you can see that that ended up working much better. I'm also noticing that we don't have a proposed surface in our profile, which means I must have selected the wrong one. So, not intentional, but I can show you how to add a surface to an existing profile while we're in here. To do that, we're going to select our profile view. We're going to go to Profile View Properties. This shows you the profiles that have already been added. So in this case, we see the two that we added before, the EX Surface Overall. That one's working. The Proposed Surface 4 is the one I added, apparently by mistake. So even though it's not showing up, I like to uncheck it, just so that I know if I need to get in there later to see which surfaces are showing up, I know which ones actually are and which aren't, so I don't have to guess. Now to add the new one, we're going to go to Profile, Create Surface Profile. We have our alignment. Now I believe it was just PR Surface, so I'm going to add that. Go to FG for the style and click OK. And then click OK here. And now it shows up. The other thing I want to do is tweak our bands because you can see our proposed elevations aren't set up. So we're going to click on our grid, go to Profile View Properties, and then under Bands, I need to change the Profile 2 option to PR Surface, Surface 5, and hit Apply and OK. Now everything looks right the way we want it to be. So there's one way to do an alignment and profile on your pipe network for Storm. The other way is my preferred way, which is to draw a polyline of the alignment first. It's just a little bit quicker to me, skips a few steps of going through dialog boxes, and then I can just make an alignment based on that. So I'm going to go up to my alignment tool, create alignment from objects, select my polyline, which runs all the way down to here to EX1. I'm going to look for the tiny direction arrow that is always difficult to find and try to determine the direction of the alignment. Sometimes you can't find it, and when that happens, I usually just accept it and then flip it afterwards if I need to. That's the case here. So within this dialog box, I can name my alignment. So I believe this was I7 to EX1. We'll set it as a miscellaneous starting at station 0. We'll put it on our Storm Profiles site with a proposed centerline style and proposed centerline label set. I do not want to check the boxes to add curves between tangents, but in this case I am going to erase the existing entities and hit OK. And now we see our alignment. We can see that it is going the direction I want. I wanted it to go from upstream to downstream, and it is based on the stationing. So now we have an alignment there. Now I'm just going to repeat the process real quick of creating that profile. So again, we're going to go to Profile. We're going to go to Create Surface Profile. We're going to select our I7 to EX1 alignment. We're going to add the correct surfaces this time of EX Surface Overall and PR Surface. EX Surface Overall we're going to change from Standard to EG, and PR Surface we're going to change from Standard to FG. Now we're going to draw on profile view, name our view, I7 to EX1. Profile view style looks good, hit next. Leave our station range on automatic again, hit next. We'll use our user specified height and hit next. Make sure our labels are set to no labels, which they are this time, and hit next. Now within here, because I did not create the alignment from the network parts, it doesn't know which parts I need to draw. So I'm going to use this select pick box to click on the objects that I want to add. So I'm going to do a series of parts. I'm going to click on my first structure, and then I'm going to click on my last structure, and we'll see what it grabs in between. Yep, so it grabbed everything I wanted. Then I'm going to right click to end the command. You can see in the list here that all looks good. I'll hit next. Now I'll set my data bands to show the correct elevations based on the correct profiles. And then we'll create our profile view. It's going to ask us again where we want to put it. I'm going to put it over here in my green box. And there it is. This time, both the surfaces are there, the bands look good, and you can see all of the inlets and pipes are showing up. Okay, so that is how we're going to do that. The last thing I want to show you is how to add pipe network parts to a road profile. This is something that designers will probably have to do a lot if you're working on a residential subdivision, something like that. So I'm going to jump into this MD, which is also in your sample files. Within here you can see there is a pipe network that's already data shortcutted in, and I'm just going to add some of these inlets and pipes into this road profile. It's a profile of this driveway that connects these two areas. So to add the network parts to that profile, all you have to do is select the ones you want. So I'll just grab these pipes and inlets. And then once they're selected, there's a button in your ribbon that says Draw Parts in Profile. When you click that, it prompts you to click on a view. So I'm going to click on my grid, and there you can see my inlets and my pipes that I selected have been added. So that would be how you do that in a road profile. You could also do that with sanitary sewer pipe network parts in either a road profile, or if for some reason you wanted to show them in a storm profile to check clearances or something, you could do it the same way. So that's how we do that. We'll jump back into the presentation slides and keep moving. Okay, next up, how to label storm sewer pipe networks. Okay, so a note, and I know we've talked about this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Currently, the label styles that show an offset from the center line, we do not want to use. These would be inlet labels, because Civil 3D measures the offset from the insert point of whatever structure you have. So on a round sanitary sewer manhole, this works okay, but on a rectangular inlet box, especially a type C inlet box, we may not want that offset to be a foot off the curb, for example. Generally, we would probably want that offset to be at the face of curb. So we don't want to use those styles with our storm sewer pipe networks. If it's something that you are required to show, you could always edit label text on your labels and type that in manually if you'd want to. So we are going to jump back into Civil 3D. We're going to go through how to label some storm sewer pipe networks in profile. And I'll show you how to label some crossing pipes in a profile view as well, which is definitely useful if you are checking for conflicts cover and the distance between two utilities in profile. So we'll jump into CAD. We are going to go back into our Stormwater MD file, and we're going to go back to these working profiles that we're doing. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to go to the Annotate tab in our ribbon. We're going to go to Add Labels. Then under the Feature dropdown, we're going to select Pipe Network. Under the Label Type, there are lots of options. The ones I use most often are the single part because I want to control exactly where it's putting these labels. So I usually use single part profile for our profile labels. And then it wants you to pick styles. So for your structure label style, we are going to use the storm profile, which is already selected by default in this drawing. And then under pipes, we're going to select storm profile, length description, and slope rules, which is also pre-selected here. For our crossing pipe style, we'll look at that one later because that's dependent on what you're showing. So once we have the pipe label style and structure label style that we want, I'm going to click Add. And now it wants me to click on which parts I want to label. So I'm going to go into my profile views and I'm just going to start clicking on parts. So I'm going to click my pipes and my structures. And I'll just do it for both. Okay, so now they've been added. One thing to note, when you're working with the labeling in your profiles, you always want to be at the annotation scale that you're going to display those profiles at in your plot sheets. So we usually use 50 scale, so I'm going to change my annotation scale over to 1 to 50. It's going to make my plan view a mess, but it's going to make my profile labels much easier to see. So once you have these in here, it's going to insert them at, I think, usually the top of the structures. So what I usually do with inlet labels, I drag them up. Our standard for labeling in profiles is that your storm sewer labels should be above the profile and your sanitary should be below. Keeps things consistent and makes it more predictable to know where the labels are going to be for whatever you're looking for. So that's something to note, especially if you're not familiar with creating profiles, because you don't have to do it very often. So got all those dragged up. Next thing with the structure labels, you'll notice it has stationing, but it has them all with question marks. So I'm just going to grab all of the labels for the structures in this profile. And then in my CAD properties, you can see here it has a reference alignment section and it's currently set to none. I'm going to change that to my PR storm alignment that was created from the network parts. You want to make sure you're matching the alignment that was used for the profile. Now, let's just say you created the profile view a long time ago and you don't remember which alignment it was. One easy way to check is to just click on your profile view, and then in properties under data, it'll show the parent alignment. That's the alignment that the profile view is based on. So that's the one you want to use for any of the labels that are referencing a station in that profile. So I'm going to select these labels, going to go to the reference alignment section and change it from none to alignment PR storm 1. Now you can see it gave me my station 232.16. That makes sense. So that's a good way to double check that I selected the correct alignment. So now those are there. Now let's look at our pipe labels. You'll notice anywhere where there's a bend in the alignment, it adds an extra label for the end of these pipes. I usually just delete those because we don't want to show them. But these are the labels that we want to see with your length, size of pipe, type of pipe, and your slope. It also adds your flow arrows. An issue that you sometimes will run into is that your label is too long for the length of your pipe in the profile. When that happens, there are a few things you can do. The first thing I try is to just change this label style. Instead of the storm profile, length, description, and slope rules, I'm going to change it to the storm profile, length, description, and slope rules stacked. When I do that, it moves the text under the pipe, keeps your flow arrow, and it condenses it onto multiple lines, which cleans it up a lot, so you don't have the same text conflicts. Now, what you may run into at times, if you have multiple utilities shown in your profile, is that this will create more text conflicts because maybe the bottom of this label now clips your sanitary sewer. If that's the case, you can always select the label, grab the drag label grip, and you can put it in a dragged state. Now, one issue that you will have if you do this is that you'll lose your flow arrow, but you can add that back on by going back into your Add Labels dialog box and just changing your pipe label style to Profile Flow Arrow, and then click Add and click on your pipe, and it'll add that flow arrow back in. So that's how you would label your storm sewer pipe network in Profile. One other thing I want to show you is how to add and label a crossing pipe in a profile. So to do that, I am going to actually jump back over to this regular MD file, and back in our road profile, I'm going to add a crossing pipe. I'm going to add it for this pipe that comes along here at an angle, because it hasn't already been added to the profile view. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select it. I'm going to draw parts in profile. I'm going to click on my grid, and now you see the pipe. It's up here. Because it's coming at an angle across the alignment, it kind of looks like a normal pipe, but I just want to see the ellipse of where this pipe is at the point that it crosses this center line alignment. I used this type of display for pipes most often in sanitary sewer profiles, where I want to see where the other utilities are crossing the sanitary, but you could use it in this application as well. So to change it, I am going to click on my grid. I'm going to go to Profile View Properties. Then I'm going to go to my Pipe Networks section. And here you can see this would show all of the pipe networks in your drawing. So you could have sanitary and you could have storm, and they would show up here by the name of your network. Within this storm section, you see all of the pipes and structures. The checkboxes here indicate which ones are currently being drawn in your profile. Now, before I got in here, I could have clicked on this pipe to see the name of it so that I could figure out which one of these pipes I want to change. But there's also a really nice tool when you're doing crossing pipes that prevents you from having to remember all of the names of them. So if you click on this box that says Show Only Crossing Pipes, this is going to show you any pipes within this network that crosses the center line alignment that you're profiling. So there are 3 of them. Only one of them is drawn, so I know which one it is. But if you have maybe 15 of these or something and you want to wade through them a little quicker, you could also check this box, Show Only Parts Drawn in Profile View, and it'll only show you the ones that you currently have shown in the view and that currently cross the alignment. So that has to be this guy. I am going to go under, well, First, I need to change the style of this pipe to a crossing style. But if I change it here under style, it will change it in plan view and in any profile. I don't want that because it will mess up all of your plans. So you never want to change this style, but what you do want to change is style override. Anywhere you change this, it only affects the entity whose properties you're changing it within. What I mean by that is if I change this in this profile view properties for this profile, it will only change the way that pipe looks within this profile view. If I change it within a sanitary sewer profile view properties, it will only change it there. It gives you a lot more control and it won't mess up any of the things you already have put together. So I'm going to override it. When I click that, it prompts me for a style. Within there, I'm going to choose pipe crossing pipe, and this is a storm pipe, so I'm going to pick the storm one. I'm going to click OK. Then I click apply, and you can see it changed it over to an ellipse. Within here, now, if I want to label this pipe, I'm going to use a similar process to what we did before. So I'm going to go to add labels. I'm going to go to pipe network, and I'm going to go to single part profile. This is where the crossing pipe label style comes in. So I'm going to change this from standard to PTE PR crossing pipe because it is a proposed pipe that I'm labeling. Sometimes we might have an existing pipe that we want to label, in which we would use the EX crossing pipe. So we're going to use PR crossing pipe, click add, and then I'm just going to click on that pipe. Sometimes it adds an extra flow arrow or an extra label that's just kind of hanging out here, similar to how it does with the regular pipes. If it does that, delete the one you don't need. This label style will give you the size and type of pipe and the invert where the pipe is crossing the alignment, which is really useful if you're checking for clearance between utilities. So we have that. We could label any pipe this way from any pipe network in any profile as a way to check for crossings. Okay, so that covers how to label storm sewer profiles. Now we're going to jump back over to the slides. Okay, last thing we're going to cover today is how to make a storm sewer structure chart. When you do this, I like to break them up by pipe runs to try to keep things organized. Otherwise, it's going to make a really long storm chart that doesn't seem to have much order to it. So I usually break them up. I'm going to show you how I do that, an example of it here on the next slide. But after you have an idea of how you're going to break things up, you're going to create a structure table and then a separate pipe table, and those will get nested together to show all of the data that you need. And I'll show you how to do that as well. So this markup shows an example of how I might break up a pipe network into runs for storm charts. So I had to reuse some of my highlighter colors here. This doesn't mean that the blues are all in the same chart. That's why I numbered them. So for example, this circled number 3 in green, this would be one chart. The circled number 2 that's in blue, that could be another chart. This orange would be its own chart, yellow, and so on. If you break them down this way, you can keep things organized. You can put things in the order you want. So for example, in this project, there were 3 lots being shown on this plan. Maybe I want all of the lot 1 storm charts beside each other or on the same sheet, and maybe I want all of these lot 3 charts on the same sheet. So you can break things down that way, which is useful to keep things organized. Okay, so how do you actually create the charts? I'm going to show you kind of the step-by-step, but there's always a little bit of troubleshooting. This is something that's evolving and that we're trying to get better at, coming up with a really consistent system of how to do. But for right now, there are a couple things you have to look out for. Every once in a while, you might have an issue where the 2 tables that we nest together don't line up. If that happens, or as a way to try to keep it from happening, You want to try to limit the amount of spaces you put in your structure names. So for example, an outfall pipe or an maybe an end wall or something for an outfall, you could call it out space A-1, or you could call it out dash A1. When it's all one string that's not separated by spaces, it will not throw any of it down to a new line, which would mess up the rest of your table. As opposed to the out space A1, it'll put out on one line and then A-1 on the next line, and it'll mess up everything below it. We don't want that. The other thing we can try to do is keep our structure descriptions to a reasonable length, and also make sure the pipes are drawn in the correct direction. And there's a way to check that using the two charts that are nested together, which I'll show you. And then we're also going to talk about how to set structure descriptions. For anyone who's done this, you know it can sometimes be a little bit cumbersome, but there is an easy way to do it, and I'll show you how to do that as well. So, last exercise we're going to do today is creating a storm chart. We're going to create our tables, the two tables, and nest them together. We're going to check to make sure everything's drawn in the correct direction. And then we're going to set some structure descriptions using the structure properties and the Project Explorer. And I'll show you how to add some wipeouts over the top of grade elevations on structures that don't actually have top of grades, like outfall pipes, end walls, head walls, those types of things. So that's where we're headed. We're going to jump back into Civil 3D. We're going to go back to our Stormwater MD file. First thing you want to do when you are creating your storm charts is make sure your annotation scale is set to whatever you're going to use for your viewport scale in your plan sheet for storm charts. I always use 50 because it's the same as what we use for our profiles. Mine's already set at 50. Yours probably should be too if you're following along with the profile labeling, so no change should be needed there. First step we are going to do is to create a structure table. So I'm going to go to Annotate, Add Tables, Pipe Network, Add Structure. Here it's going to ask you for styles. So I'm going to go to Storm Structure Table, and you want to find the one that ends in this split chart left side. And this next part is critical because if you leave this set to by network with the network selected, it's going to create a huge table that has every structure in your network, but it's going to be out of order. So I use multiple selection, and then I do the pick box. For the table we do today, I would break this down into runs like I showed on that highlighted plan. So maybe I'm going to do this run from I5 to I1 as a table. And then if I wanted to break it down more, I could go this other one that I had profiled from I7 down to EX1 as its own. And I could do one from I8 to I9. For the exercise, we're just going to do I5 to I1. So I'm going to select all of the structures within that run that I want to have in the table. So I5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Then I'm going to right click. It verifies I selected 5, which I did. This split table feature, this would be if you have a run that has a lot of structures. So what it means is if I have more than 20 structures selected, it's going to create a second column. This case doesn't matter, so I can just leave that alone. And I want this behavior to be dynamic so that if I change something in the pipe network, the chart will automatically update the inverts and tops and pipe information. So I'm going to click OK. Now it's going to prompt me for where to put this. This is where our new template update comes in. We have the storm chart section now. I'm going to put that within this area. And you can see it creates the storm chart that we're used to seeing, except all of the pipe information is blank. To fill that in, we're going to go to Add Tables, Pipe Network, Add Pipe, and then under Pipe Style, we're going to change that, or Table Style, we're going to change that to the style that says Split Chart Right Side at the end of it. Now, just like before, we're going to do the multiple selection for what we're showing, do our pick box, and now we're going to grab the pipes that were in that run that we're doing. So there's I5 to I4, I4 to I3, 3 to 2, and 2 to 1. I selected 4, that's correct. I'm going to leave the reactivity mode as dynamic and click OK. Now, it wants me to select where to put this information. As you can see, the chart that it wants me to place has data, but it doesn't have any grid lines. It just has a boundary box. I want to line up the top left corner of this box with the top left corner of the one I created before. So I'm going to turn on my object snap and snap to the end point of that upper left corner. And now you can see that it fills in our information. You can also probably see that we have a problem with something here. So this column is duplicated in both of these tables. What that allows you to do is check if you drew your pipes in the correct direction to see if everything is showing up in the correct order. In this case, this project got a little bit odd because this box actually has 2 invert outs because of an oil-water separator. Because of that, this particular chart requires a little bit more manual manipulation. For the sake of the exercise, we're going to ignore that for right now. Everything else looks good, and actually what we can even do is show the dynamic part. If I delete this pipe, which might crash your drawing, hopefully not. Okay, there we go. You can see it dynamically updated here, and everything lines up, which means this pipe run is still drawn in the correct direction, which we already knew, but it didn't line up because there were 2 invert outs. So we've taken care of that for now. As of now, we're just going to assume that this run runs all the way down, and we're going to ignore that oil-water separator. But now you've got your pipe run, you've got your pipe type, length, size, and slope. All of those should match the information that you have in your working profile down here as you do your design. Okay, so now that we've got our storm chart, we've got it updated, the next thing I want to do is set my structure descriptions. Now, in this particular drawing, because the pipe network was already created, these descriptions were already set. But let's say I want to change them for some reason. There are 2 different ways to modify. And a reason why you might need to do this after they're already created is if you upsize a box, for example. So if I were to make this box a 4x4 box, the description wouldn't update itself. In fact, I think it might even reset itself to the default value, which just says PTE inlets, which you definitely don't want. So just as an example of how to change that, you select the box you want to change if you only need to do one. And then you're going to right click and go to Structure Properties. In the Information tab, you can type whatever you want that description to be right here. So for this, I'm just going to type test. When I hit apply and OK, you can see it updated the structure description here under structure type. Now, let's say you just created a brand new pipe network and you need to create structure descriptions for all of your structures. You don't want to go through and do that individually for 20 inlets or whatever you have on your project. So the easiest way to do that is to use the Project Explorer. To do that, we are going to go to our Home tab. We're going to click Project Explorer. If you're using an older version of CAD, you may not have Project Explorer, but that's another good reason to upgrade. The newer versions, it comes with Project Explorer already baked in, but some of the older ones, it was an add-on because it was new. So if that option doesn't show up for you, that is probably why. Okay, so once we get our Project Explorer, it opens up a window that looks like this. All of these tabs across the top are your Civil 3D objects. I'm going to click the one with the pipe network symbol. In this drawing, I have one network, PR Storm. You select it, and then down here you can select either structures or pipes. I'm going to select structures because that's what I want to do the description of. And you could select all of the same type of structures. So let's say you want to pick the description for all of your 2x4 type Cs. You would select all of those in here. So the way I do it, I sort by structure style. And I'm going to grab anything that's a 2x4 type C inlet. So we're going to just do that. So I click the first one, I hold down Shift, I click the last one. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to say Set Descriptions. And here you can type whatever you want it to be. I'm just going to put something in here and hit OK. It updated the description everywhere, and now that those are set, I can close the Project Explorer and you can see it updated my storm chart everywhere. So that's how those work. The Project Explorer is a really nice way to do that quickly. If you have a project that has a lot of structures, it can save you a ton of time because you don't need to go into every single structure's properties. I mean, it can save literal hours just by doing that. So it's definitely a good one. Okay, last thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about wipeouts, and then I'm going to show you the new storm chart plot file or sheet. So if you have a structure like an end wall or a head wall or an outfall pipe, we know that that does not have a grade on it. So it would not have a top of grade elevation. But Civil 3D doesn't know that. So it puts a top of grade elevation on everything. So let's just for a minute here say that structure I1 is actually an end wall that doesn't have a top of grade. The way that you would go about fixing that so that it doesn't show one when it shouldn't be there is by getting on making the layer current that your tables are on. So I'm going to go to PRUT Storm table, make that current, and now I'm going to make a wipeout. So I just type wipeout, and you can do it by selecting a polyline. I usually just draw one. So I'm just going to select a corner. It does not let you snap polar or ortho, so they're going to be a little bit messy, but honestly it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to select my four corners, right click, and you can see that the top of grade elevation disappears. But you can still see the frame here, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to save my drawing, and we're going to jump over to our storm charts file, which is new to our sheet set template. So when you first start your sheet set, you may need to set the path of your XREF. When you do that, you want it to be pathed to your Storm MD. This sample file I already pathed, so it already knows that I saved it, so I'm going to reload it, and you can see that your storm chart shows up because these sheets are already set up over those green boxes. So the first tab comes up over that top left box, and then the second tab is the next one in. So here we can see this. You can see that our top of grade elevation is gone, but our wipeout frame is there. And if I would go to make a plot of this, which we'll do real quick, maybe. Okay. I'm going to go to preview, and you can see in my print preview that it shows that frame around the top of grade. I don't want that, so I'm going to show you how to get rid of it. So I'm going to close out my print preview. there are two settings that you need to change. Well, one setting in two places. So in my StormMD, I want to change the wipeout frame variable. So I'm going to type wipeout frame. This can either be set to 0, 1, or 2. By default, it's set to 1. That means you can see the frame in CAD and it prints. If you set it to 0, you won't be able to see it, and it don't think it prints. If you set it to 2, it will still block whatever you're printing, and you'll be able to see the frame in CAD, but it won't print the frame. So I'm going to set it to 2, and I'm going to save my drawing. And then in my storm chart file, I'm going to reload, and I'm going to type wipeout frame again, and I'm going to set the variable to 2. Now, I'm going to do that print preview again. And you can see it shows up as if there's nothing there, which is exactly what we would want if that was an end wall, head wall, or outfall pipe. So what I typically do, I draw the first one over the top of grate, and then I just copy that wipeout over any of the other ones that I need, and it takes care of it. That's the workaround for that. Hopefully someday there's a way in Civil 3D for it to know which files or which structures need to have topogrates and which don't. But as of now, that's about the best we have. So that also shows you your new storm sewer plan sheet functionality. And that's pretty much all we were going to cover today. So does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute and ask, or you can throw it in the chat. I haven't seen any chats come up during the presentation today. So I'll give you a minute to run through that. Think about if you have any questions. While you do, just want to kind of update everybody. We're getting near the end of the year, which means we're soon going to be trying to come up with some new topics for our CAD trainings for next year. So if anyone has any ideas, maybe it's something new or something that we've already done one on, but you want a little more detail or clarification on something, please let either Hauser or I know, and we'd be happy to get it on the list so that we can try to keep these as useful for everyone as possible. If there's anything that you think we've covered well and you don't want to see again, let us know that too, because we don't want to repeat something that people don't really need to see. So please, by all means, give us any feedback you can. We want these to be as useful for everyone as possible. And yeah, hopefully we'll have another good slate of these for next year. Okay, in the chat, I see a question about curved storm pipes. So that is something that we can do in a training coming up. At this point, it'll probably be next year. But if you look on YouTube, there is a video. I want to say it's either April of this year or maybe July or August of last year that covers how to create curved storm pipes. So I would check that first. And then if there are still questions, let me know. And we can definitely keep it on the list. But I'd say it's probably something we should cover again because I know we haven't done it in a while. So that's a good thing to keep up to date on. And seeing no other questions, I think that's kind of where we're going to call it for today. So thank you everybody for joining, and we will see you on the next one.